Welcome back to my channel, beautiful people. What up, what up, what up? So in today's video, we're gonna be talking about brushes. What different brushes there is and like what they're used for, I guess if you wanna call it like that. So if you wanna know more about makeup brushes, then just keep on watching. I don't know how good this lighting is right now. It was like messing with me earlier. So I don't even know like how crazy I look right now, but we're using some natural light right now. I'm just gonna go like step by step. So first things first, when you put on primer, you can use a brush, you can use your hands. If you want to use your hands, just make sure you wash your hands, obviously. Don't be nasty.
That get nasty.
But what I like to do is I like to put my primer on my face with my hands and then go with like a buffing brush and use that. I've been using the Morphe M439, and every brush that I mentioned in this video I will link down in the description box. You do not have to use these specific brushes. You can just use whatever you have, but just like this in the same family, I guess you want to call it. But I use this brush to put on my primer. It looks like this. And I also use it sometimes to put on my foundation. Even if I use this brush to put on my foundation, I still go back to my beauty blender. I know, look how clean she is. She's so clean. So I like using this for my primer and foundation. When going to look for a brush, if you don't like using a beauty blender or a Real Technique sponge or anything, and you want to stick to a brush with applying your foundation or primer, you really need to get a synthetic brush. And if you don't know the difference between synthetic brushes and non-synthetic brushes, this is a non-synthetic brush right here. This is not, like, the bristles aren't synthetic. These bristles are synthetic, and I'm trying to think what else. I know it's hard to explain. Like, these bristles on this brush are synthetic. When you're using liquids, you want to use a synthetic brush, because if you use a regular brush to buff out liquids, it's not going to buff out as good. It's going to absorb all the product. Now, synthetic brushes do absorb some product, obviously, but non-synthetic brushes absorb way more product because of the bristles. Does that make sense? Once you start doing your makeup and you test out synthetic brushes, non-synthetic brushes with liquids and powders, you'll get what I'm saying. But I'm letting you know now. Stick with synthetic brushes with any type of liquids. So this is what I use for my primer and sometimes foundation. So after I do that, after I put my foundation on, I'll go with my beauty blender and buff everything out. Now for my concealer, I will put my concealer on and I will go back with my beauty blender and buff that out. Now, if you don't want to use a beauty blender sponge, you don't have to. You can use a brush. I would go in with this brush right here. This is a Morphe M334, and it has synthetic bristles. So it's angled, as you can tell. It's a little angled, and it's like not too thick, so it's thinner, so you can go in and buff out any of your concealer if you don't want to use your beauty blender. I like to use my beauty blender, but you can do this with the synthetic. So after I've put on my concealer with my brush, I want to set my face. Now there's different brushes you can use this for. You can use a powder brush, like big fluffy brush like this, and just set your whole face with translucent powder, especially under your eyes. But not with this one, obviously. You'll need something more like dense like this, or bigger like this to get under your eyes to set that, or like something small like that. This one's a Morphe 176 to set your under eye, and this one, this one's rubbed off, but it's a Morphe, it's the Rose Gold collection, and you set that. But if you don't want to use a big brush to set your whole face, you can just go in with your beauty sponge. I like to use my Real Techniques ones for this, like something like this, and just set your whole face with it if you want. If you don't want to use your brush, but you would honestly want to use something big like this to set your whole face. That way you can get it done faster. And then you set your eyes with something small like this or something like that, okay? Or even, you can even use that if you wanted to. And this one's a Morphe brush as well. It's rubbed off. It's the Gunmetal collection. Now, after you have set your whole face, you want to, now these are the steps I do. If you want to do all these steps differently, that's fine. Like there's no wrong or right way of applying makeup. It's all like what's good for you, what works for you, and what works for your skin. So after I like to set my face with a powder, I like to do my contour. So with my contour, I use a flatter brush. It's more of a flat and it has, so it can get in your cheekbones real good. See the difference between this big one and this one? This one's flatter and this one's more rounder, I guess. This one's for all over powder and this one's for my contouring, my bronzer. So if you see the difference. And then obviously these aren't synthetic because you're using powders. So this is one I will use. This one's just an e.l.f. complexion brush. And I like how it's tapered, you know, it's small, it gets in there. So this is what I use. So then after that, I like to go in with this bigger of a denser brush. It's like the same concept as my contour brush, this e.l.f. one, except this one is a lot fluffier. And these I just got done cleaning my brushes, so they look like they're really stiff, but they're really not. They're just kind of wet and damp. But so for this brush, it's a Morphe M551. It looks like that. And what I like to do with this one is after I've did my contour right here around my forehead and my jawline, I like to go in with this bigger one and just blend it out, just buff any harsh lines that I've made. So I like to go in with this one, okay? Now, if you've done your contour and you put too much contour on, I would go back to my fluffy brush where I set my face and use some of the leftover product on the brush to buff out any harsh lines that I might have put way too much contour on. And then would go back and blend it out with this one. So that's for my contour brushes. Now for my blush brush, I like to go back and forth between this one and this one. Again, they're both non-synthetic, so you use it with powders. This one I like to do if I'm like in a rush and it just gets like on my cheekbones real quick and then buff it out. This one's more denser than this one. This one's a lot fluffier. The fluffy one is an M401. It looks like that. And then this one is the E6. It's smaller than the powder brush. See the difference? It's smaller. So you don't want it to be huge because then you'll end up with blush all over your face. So you want it to be small enough, but you also want it to be fluffy because you don't want to have like a harsh line of blush. You want it to just get in there like that. So those are the brushes I use for my blush. So now I'm going to switch it up and go with my eyebrow brush. And my eyebrow brush is the Morphe.
2 hours later.
Morphe M158 or my Anastasia one. But your eyebrow brush is going to look like this. Something like angled, and then it's going to have, usually has a spoolie in the back. Usually they are synthetic. This one is because it came with my Morphe pomade eyebrow. This is what I use on my brows. It's like a little, it's not powder and it's not like 100% liquid, but it's it's like clay. So you want to use a synthetic brush with that. So that's what I use on my brows. And after I do my brows, I like to carve them out with my concealer or with my Morphe Brow Baby pencil. That looks like that. And that's like it's like a creamy, it looks like a concealer anyways. I don't know if you can tell. It looks like that. But, so after I do my brows, I like to carve them. So I take that and take this little brush. It's like angled, like that. The bristles on this are synthetic as well. So that's why I use them with my concealer for carving out my brows. And this brush is the Morphe M165. You could also use this brush if you wanted to do like a wing liner. That's what I like to use to carve my brows because it gets it really close like that. And then after I carve them with this, I like to buff it out because you don't want harsh lines. So what I usually take is probably like a brush, something like this, just to buff out that line. And this is a Morphe brush as well, it doesn't say. But after like I carve it, I like to buff out that concealer. Like I don't want it to have a harsh line. And sometimes I'll bring it down on my lid and then I'll set that with a translucent powder so there's no creasing. Now with eyes, there's a lot more brushes that go in depth with eyes, but I'll just show you like the main essential brushes, okay, that you will need. You know, I don't want to overwhelm y'all because let's be real, I have so much brushes. So if I talked, let me just show you. Okay, most of these are all for your eyes, okay? And then I have some more that I rarely use, okay? I'm not gonna tell you every little one of these and what they're used for, because most of them are just blending brushes. They're just like bigger and smaller, blah 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 blah. I'm just gonna show you the essentials and what I use, and I do not want to overwhelm y'all, or let's be real, bore you. So, main thing I'll show you is all my blending brushes. These are all my blending, well, the main ones that I use for blending brushes, okay? These are my main ones. If you don't know what blending brushes are, it's when you put on an eyeshadow, okay? And as soon as you put that on, you need to start blending. So the first brush you use is like your main blending brush from your transition shade. And I don't know if that's confusing to y'all, but it's like the first eyeshadow color you put on. Like, let's see, I would probably use, out of all these brushes, possibly the biggest one would be the perfect blending brush to start with. So I would say this one and or this one, okay? One of them is the E26 Morphe and the other one's an M504. They're very similar in size, as you can tell, but they're very different. This one is more rounder and this one's more dense. So this one would be perfect for blending your blending. And this one would be perfect for blending as well. But this one would be perfect for blending another shade under this shade. Does that make sense? So a blending brush, you're just gonna put like this, like your color on top, and you're just gonna blend it out, you know, do your motions, blah, 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 blend and blend. And then with another blending brush, if you wanna add another color to your eyeshadow, this one would go under the big one you just did, because it's smaller, a little smaller, and you're gonna blend the new color on there and buff it out, you know, blend, blend, blend. And then this is another blending brush. This is a Morphe M521. And then this one would be clean without any eyeshadow, and you can go back and blend all those eyeshadows together. And that helps it. I don't know if you ever seen people and you've seen their eyeshadow and you can like their eyeshadow is just like a very, very harsh line. The blending brushes, the ones I showed you, these help with blending out those harsh lines. So you would blend it out. I don't know if I told you this. This is an M521. It looks like that. So you blend it out. You really honestly only need about 3 blending brushes. You don't really need, if you're not a makeup artist and like don't do makeup on a daily or on people, about 3 is about mostly what all you need. You don't really need more than 3. This brush right here is a Morphe M411. It's a lot smaller than those other ones I just showed you, and it has like a dome, because you can tell with these, I'll show you the comparison, okay? I know they probably look all the same to you if you don't know much about brushes, but you see how smaller and denser this one is than all these blending brushes? So with this brush that I like to do and I like to use is after I've gotten like some eyeshadow on there, if I want to darken the crease a little bit or a lot, I will dip this into a darker color, whatever it is, and I will darken that crease enough to get in your inner corner, or in your crease, not inner corner. It's small enough to get on your crease, but it also is round enough and has fullness where it's gonna blend it out as well. You know what I'm saying? Because you don't want like a dark line in your crease and it's just like a dark line. You want it to blend out. So after I do that, I'll take whatever blending brush that I use to buff everything out, and I'll buff again. Like, it's all about like going back, buff, blend, blend, blend. So then after I do that, if I wanted to go back and have more of an intense crease, like a more defined crease, then I would go with a smaller brush like this. And it looks, if you can tell, it's a lot smaller than the first one. And this one is, I don't know, because it's rubbed off because I've used it so much. Because see the difference? The first one, the black one, is a lot bigger than that one, if you can tell. So with this brush, that's when I want it, if I want to intensify the crease more. So this one, you would go in the crease as well and just intensify that color, and it will make it pop more because it's smaller. Another use for this brush that I like is when I do my lower lash line. After I put my couple of colors that I do, I like to use this one and just buff it out, just smoke it out. And it's perfect because it's small, but it's also gonna blend it out because it's not too small. You get what I'm saying? Now for my lid, if I want to do a sparkly, like shimmery lid, I will use this brush right here. Okay? This brush right here. This is a synthetic brush. So I like to use this with any of shimmer colors that I want to put on my lid. And this is the Morphe M224. So what I like to do with this brush with any shimmer shades, sometimes I'll wet it with my setting spray, pack the eyeshadow on my lid like this. Sometimes I don't need setting spray. Sometimes I can just dip into that shade and it's like, whoa. Okay, so I like to use this one with my shimmers. This brush is similar to this brush, except this one is synthetic that I like to use for my shimmers, and this one's non-synthetic, so I like to use if I use a matte on my lid. This is a Tarte one that came in one of my kits, but you can use just any type of flat non-synthetic brush like that. Okay, so this one I like to use on my lid as well if I don't want to do any shimmery colors, so I like to do that, blah blah blah. So that's another brush that I like to use. For my lower lash powder, lower lash line, however you want to call it. This brush right here, this is a Morphe M508, if you can tell. And this one is so little, you can tell it's so little, okay? And it's so like, it's not gonna blend. Like this is like just putting on a color and then you'll go back and blend it out with any type of brush. This one's so little, I like to use literally on my lash line to put my first color in and just like pack that in on your lower lash, okay? Because it's so small and dense, it's gonna make that color pop. So what I like to do is do that first and then do another color or whatever, and take this little brush, and this is a E36, Morphe E36, and it looks like that. I like to take that one and go right under where I put the first color and buff that out with another color or whatever. And it's gonna buff it out. Now with the other brush that I use on my crease, this one, back to this one again, I use this one to buff it out because it's bigger. It's bigger than all three of them. It's the biggest one. So this one first, this one second, and then this one to buff everything out. Now you don't have to do this step. You can just use one whole brush if you want to. I like to use like these steps because I just feel like it gradually looks a smoky lower lash moment, eyeshadow moment or whatever. So you don't have to use all three of these. You don't even have to use any of these brushes. This is just what I like to use. Now it's time for my highlight brush, and the highlight brush I use is a Morphe one. It looks like this. It's looks like it's dirty, but it's just stained from color. The number has rubbed off. Any type of fluffy brush like this would be good for highlight. Something like this could be used as a highlight brush. Like literally they're like pretty much the same. This one's an M501, and I don't know what this one is, but literally like any type of brush like this for a highlight, because you just want to you just want to buff it like nothing. Some people use a fan brush like this, but a lot smaller. I like it. It's okay. I'd rather use something like that though. So it's just what your preference is. This brush is an M412, Morphe M412. And I like to use this one to contour my nose, just if I want to. So I'll dip my brush in my bronzer and, you know, just contour my nose, however way you want to do it. And if you need to blend it out, just use any of your blending brushes that you had for your eyeshadow. Make sure there's no product on it, obviously, and just blend that contour out. And that's pretty much it. Now, last but not least, some people like to do like an inner corner highlight, and I totally forgot to put that on today. So I'll just go ahead and do it now and show you. So what I like to use for my inner corner highlight is this Morphe M168, and it looks like this. It's a little pencil brush, almost like a little. It just like gets in that corner real good. So these bristles are synthetic, and I like to use synthetic because it will make my highlight pop more because I'm gonna wet the brush. So what I do is wet my brush just a tad, get whatever highlight I want to use, dab that in there, okay? And then you're just gonna add more if you want. Some people like more of an intense highlight, and then you just put that on your inner corner like that. Just a pop, just a little pop right there. But this is the brush I use for that because it gets it right in there. You can even use that as a highlight brow bone. You will use it to highlight your brow bone as well. And I'll just go ahead and do that with like my leftover product. So yeah, like that. That is pretty much it. All my brushes that I use to highlight, contour, foundation. Sometimes I'll use 2 brushes to do my eyeshadow if I'm like don't feel like really using a lot of color. Sometimes I use 5 brushes. It's just all in what you use. It's all in what you want to use. And you can just play around with the brushes and see what works better. If you liked anything I used, any of these brushes, I know it got repetitive because I use mostly Morphe brushes, but they're just like really good brushes and they're so affordable. Oh yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye. This is the rhythm.